Chapter 2. Cafe Surprise. "Gentlemen, lady, and Henderson," said Selina with her waitress's notepad. "The usual?" "Yep," said little Annabelle. "The usual." How she got so excited every time they came was still something that Oliver found infectious. Ollie and Rory both agreed to the usual as well. "Okay, 1 barbecue bacon burger for Ollie, classic burger, fries, and chocolate shake combo for the Henderson, and 1 extra large fudge sundae with extra strawberry syrup and 3 cherries for the best girl on planet Earth." The little 5-year-old girl giggled and smiled, and she gave Selina their customary high five. When Selina walked away, Annabelle scooted all the way up against her big brother Rory, who ruffled her blonde curls as she laughed. She would spend the rest of the evening in the booth with them that way, snuggled up with her favorite brother and her favorite brother's best friend. The bell on the Good Eatin' Cafe door gave its little jingle, and Oliver saw one of the rarer patrons enter the establishment. It was Marcel, one of the seniors from school. They almost never saw him, and he only stayed after school to lift weights with the football team or, strangely, play chess with Mr. Bates and the other teacher who attended the student-led chess club. Ollie gestured toward Marcel with his eyes, and both Annabelle and Rory turned to look at him. Annabelle puffed out her cheeks and held out her arms, imitating Marcel's massively muscular build. Oliver and Rory had both once agreed that the senior was even beyond most movie stars in his physicality, and he clearly enjoyed wearing the sleeveless shirts and jackets. They'd also never seen him wear anything except for cargo pants and large boots. But as soon as they were admiring his walk from the door to the stool at the soda bar, they were reminded of his most defining feature. He waved at Selina, and she waved back, gesturing toward him with the limited amount of American Sign Language she knew. Marcel did the same and took his seat, and Oliver couldn't help but notice the scar across his throat that reminded everyone of the big boy's muteness. Annabelle had once said that if he could speak, his voice would be big, loud, and powerful just like his muscles. As they were eating, joking, and laughing, waiting for Selina to come sit with them on her break, Annabelle pointed out someone sitting across the large, wide-open dining room. "Hey," said Rory, "I know her. She hit me in the head today." Annabelle looked at him strangely, and he explained the hit with the backpack when he was sleeping in class. Annabelle laughed at him for falling asleep in school, but Oliver took notice of the girl. Aubrey, he couldn't remember her last name. She hadn't stopped staring at them since they'd caught sight of her. She was drinking some sort of hot, steaming beverage, which seemed strange since it was just the end of spring. Her gaze shifted over to the bar where Marcel sat, his shoulders hunched. Oliver thought maybe his mind was playing tricks on him, but he seemed to be looking at Aubrey too. Was he watching her while she was watching him, Rory, and Annabelle? Something felt wrong in a way he couldn't describe, like something was stirring his senses to alertness. "Hey man, you okay?" Rory asked. Oliver was pulled out of the strange sensation. It felt like things began to move at normal speed again. "Yeah, I'm good." "You got a weird look," said Annabelle. "In your eyes." "Just for a second, but it was kind of weird," affirmed Rory. With a big grin, Annabelle yelled, "You're freaking out!" Rory tickled her, and she giggled. Oliver smiled, but his attention was still drawn to Aubrey. He couldn't figure out why he thought this, but he was quite sure just then that she hated him with a depth he couldn't fathom. As if in response to this feeling, Selina suddenly appeared and sat down next to Oliver. Rory began to protest. "You have a girl next to you already, Henderson," she said, waving him off. She pushed a hand through Oliver's hair, and he was taken aback. Just as he'd felt a visceral rage coming from Aubrey, just then he'd felt the opposite coming from Selina. Pure, warm, gentle affection. He'd often felt something similar for her, but he would never have dared to utter it out loud. But the loving sensation that was coming from her just now, if he and Selina had been alone just then, he may very well have hugged her, or even tried to kiss her. On a strange hunch, he turned to Marcel, trying to see if he might feel anything from him. He did. It was power. Raw, courageous, protective strength. But there was also anger, and Oliver thought it must be directed at Aubrey, for what reason he couldn't possibly guess. Something was absolutely not right. It was difficult to breathe, difficult to think. Oliver stood up and exited the booth away from Selina. She and Rory were playfully nipping at each other, but they stopped when he got up suddenly. "Ollie?" "Uncle Ollie?" asked Annabelle. Her voice carried a tone of worry that made her sound much too old for her size. The tone only added to Oliver's imminent dread. "I need some air," he gasped, and made for the nearest exit sign. Selina and Rory called after him. Vaguely he heard chairs moving, as though many people were standing up at once. Ahead of him, the exit sign was bleary, like it was underwater. His legs were moving through sludge. The back exit door flew open. The cook was yelling something at him as he passed through the kitchen, and he still faintly heard Selina calling him. He realized he was now behind the dumpster of the cafe, out behind the building. In front of him was an open field, which stretched on for several acres. Suddenly his face was in the dirt and the cries increased. It took Oliver a moment to realize that someone had pushed him down and was now on his back. There was the sound of a knife being pulled from its sheath, and a feminine voice behind his ear hissed a final goodbye. "The Venators say hello, heretic." Then a blow like the crack of a baseball bat sounded. The girl atop him grunted with a loud oof, and the weight left him. The knife in her hands clattered to the ground in front of Oliver's face, and he saw the strange markings on it vividly, as though they were burned into his psyche. A boot landed next to his head, Marcel's foot. Oliver was grabbed by his arm and pulled up to a sitting position, Marcel's large muscles lifting him with seemingly no effort at all. He gestured to Oliver in a manner that told Oliver to stay put, and he took a fighting stance that Oliver recognized from Taekwondo class. About 20 feet away, amid the tall grass in the field, Aubrey stood up from where she'd been flung by Marcel's life-saving assault. The rage in her eyes told the story. You tried to kill me!" Oliver cried, unable to stop the thoughts raging in his head. He was horrified. "This doesn't concern you, Vero scum!" Aubrey yelled angrily at Marcel. Oliver shuddered. The fury was practically seeping out of every pore on her body. In front of him, the big senior simply glared back at her and held his stance. From behind him, the cafe door opened and Rory and Selina came rushing out. "Ollie!" Rory yelled. "What the heck is going on?" Selina approached and stood beside Marcel, which shocked Oliver. Rory also looked at Selina with confusion, but he came and knelt beside his best friend all the same. "Jeez, Ollie!" he gasped. "Did Aubrey use that knife on you?" "Move on, Vice!" Selina shouted. Oliver and Rory both felt the wind shift just then, as though something was stirring, gathering itself in the area. Then Marcel relaxed his stance, and the wind stopped. Oliver looked over to the field, and Aubrey was gone, vanished, as if into thin air. "Where'd she go?" he asked, standing. Neither Selina nor Marcel seemed to pay much attention to him. Instead, Marcel turned immediately to Selina and spoke to her in sign language. "No, he didn't say anything to me," Selina replied to the wordless question. "What does he have to do with it?" More sign language. Oliver and Rory both watched intensely, as though they could understand it if they just focused enough. Selina looked shocked. That's impossible," she stuttered. "Bellator Gelbos?" Marcel nodded grimly. "What did he tell you to do?" Marcel replied with his hands, one of the gestures pointing at Oliver. Selina looked at Oliver with wide eyes. "Him?" Marcel nodded again. Rory finally snapped and asked his same question. "What the heck is going on?" Selina turned to the two of them. "Did Mr. Bates tell you both to go home today instead of coming here?" Oliver and Rory traded nervous glances. "I mean," Rory started. He didn't have anything else after that, so Ollie finished for him. "We didn't want to disappoint Annabelle," he said, "and we didn't think it was that serious." "Well, you were wrong," Selina said, and it looked as if it pained her to say it. She opened her mouth to say something else, but then seemed to turn pale and faint. She held out her hand, and all three boys reached out to help steady her. "Lena, what is it?" asked Rory. For the first time since they'd all known one another, Selina didn't balk at the pet name Rory had given her. "Nothing," she said, pushing away to stand on her own. "I'm fine. I'll be fine." Marcel got her attention and asked her a question. "Yeah, that's a good idea," she mumbled. She looked at both Rory and Ollie, who couldn't help but stare in awe and not a small bit of concern. "Boys, I need you to do something for me," she said, and she included Marcel in her plea as well. "Please get Ollie home right away, and make sure no one else except his mom and dad are there, okay?" Marcel nodded firmly. Rory leaned in. Oliver had never seen him so serious in all his life. "Lena," Rory said, taking her hand. She didn't pull away. What the heck is going on? Selena smiled at him, and Oliver felt that pure, affectionate love radiating from her once again. I'll explain everything, but I need to talk to someone first. Just make sure you both go right home and nowhere else. But no buts, Henderson, she told him, giving his hand a squeeze. She said his name with so much tenderness that Rory actually pulled his hand away from her. Do it for me, please. All Rory could do was nod wordlessly. Marcel patted him on the shoulder, then gestured toward the road. Oliver felt Rory and Marcel tug on him to get him to go with them, and the last thing he saw was Selena turn back to stand before the field where Aubrey had last been seen. She was standing watch, Oliver realized, and the dagger was gone.